Welcome. You're invited now to let the noise of the modern world fade into the distance. This is a time to slow down, to sink into stillness, and to drift gently into the past. The past where people lived lives very different, and yet strangely familiar to our own. Tonight, we journey to ancient Rome, not to the shining marble villas or the grand arenas, but to its underbelly, to the quiet corners of society where the real weight of empire was born. See, behind the celebrated architecture and triumphant conquests of Rome stood a vast, tireless class of laborers, and among them, perhaps none bore more silent burden than the servi publici, the public slaves. This was not the dramatic life of gladiators or the romantic visions of noble citizens. It was a world of unceasing tasks, ink-stained hands, aching backs, and the endless, forgotten rhythms of labor in the shadows of history. Tonight, we will begin there, by exploring what it truly meant to be a public slave in ancient Rome. Later, we will shift our gaze to the highest corridors of power, the unraveling of Emperor Nero himself. We'll delve into the dimly lit sanctuaries of the secretive Mithraic cult, and finally, we'll glide through the perfumed air of elite Roman banquets, where status was consumed as easily as roasted peacock. But for now, let your breath slow, let your thoughts settle, and imagine yourself in Rome. In the cool hush before dawn, the streets of Rome are still cloaked in a silvery mist. Somewhere near the edge of the Subura district, a figure stirs from his straw-filled mat laid against a cold stone wall. There is no bed frame, no blanket, no privacy, just the bare floor of a shared storeroom behind a granary. This figure is a servus publicus, public slavened, not by a private master, but by the Roman state itself. His name is unknown, his life is invisible, but every day he wakes earlier than the merchants, before the senators have donned their robes, before the markets stir, because he has work to do, and it is never finished. Public slaves formed a vital part of Rome's municipal operations. They did what needed to be done, quietly, efficiently, and without rest. Some maintained the city's vast and temperamental water supply, tending the aqueducts and unclogging the underground sewers. Others copied official documents by hand, their fingers cramped around reed pens, their eyes strained by poor candlelight. Some managed temples, sweeping stone steps, trimming lamps, and preparing incense. There were slaves who were tasked with maintaining the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer of Rome. These men, often waist-deep in foul, stagnant water, labored in near darkness, scraping filth from ancient brick and stone, battling rodents, and bracing themselves against the nauseating air. Others delivered messages through the city, weaving through congested streets with papyrus scrolls tucked under their arms. A few more fortunate ones worked in public baths, hauling water or maintaining furnaces. Their backs ached from shoveling coal and wood, their arms blistered from the heat. And when their shift ended, if it ended at all, there was no real rest. No household of their own to return to, just a shared barrack or a corner of a warehouse. Sometimes a blanket, often not. Their clothing was simple and coarse, single tunic, often reused, often unwashed. Sandals, if lucky, bare feet if not. Their meals were sparse, portion of coarse bread, a bit of porridge or an onion, sometimes a salted fish. Rarely meat. They had no names of their own, unless granted one by an administrator. They were referred to by their duty or their physical traits. The tall one from the records office, the sewer boy, the old torchbearer. Some were born into this life, born of slave mothers, and never knew freedom. Others were once free men, debtors, or prisoners, absorbed into the system as punishment. Citizenship for them was not a future, was a vanished dream. The life of a public slave was steeped in sensory contrast. The acrid stink of the sewers, the metallic taste of blood from blistered hands, the grainy dryness of ink mixed with soot and wine on papyrus, the incessant clang of hammers and carts, the suffocating heat of midday sun reflecting off stone roads, and yet they kept moving, each one part of the unseen rhythm that kept the empire running. Every task done with quiet precision, every motion expected. Never applauded. Though owned by the state, these slaves lived under constant scrutiny. Stakes were met with harsh reprimands, often lashes or public humiliation. There were no advocates for them, no courts of appeal. A lost scroll, a misdelivered message, an accidental breakage all could mean physical punishment. Some were assigned overseers, freedmen who had once been slaves themselves, who enforced the schedule with merciless discipline. These overseers were not cruel by nature necessarily, but they understood the cost of failure. There were whispers, always, of escape, of rebellion, but they were whispers only. For in Rome, eyes watched from every corner. Even among slaves, trust was rare. Yet, even in such a life, there were fleeting moments of stillness. Perhaps a sunrise glimpsed from the aqueducts. A brief shared smile when two workers crossed paths on the same errand. A cool drink of water in the shade of a public bath wall. These were rare, but they were real. For the Roman public slave, each day was a cycle of labor, exhaustion, and resignation. There was no end in sight. Celebration, no rest, but there was a rhythm, and they lived within it. And as the sun dipped below the tiled roofs of the Forum once more, the same figure might lay his head down on the same mat. The stone cold beneath him, it's the next day already waiting. As dawn melts slowly into morning light, the city of Rome awakens in layers. But for the public slave, the awakening is not gentle. Their day begins in shadows often, long before the clamor of merchants, or the footsteps of patricians on marble steps. The air is thick with the faint scent of moss and earth, mingled with the distant temps of salt from the nearby Tiber River. You are assigned to the water supply team, one of many responsible for ensuring the fountains and public baths flow steadily. Imagine yourself in the cool, damp stone corridors beneath the city. You descend narrow steps to the underground aqueducts, your footsteps echoing softly in the vaulted tunnels. Yet underground, time seems to stretch, measured by the slow drip of water and the occasional rustle of rodents in the shadows. Here, the water is clear but cold, trickling through channels carved by earlier generations. Imagine stepping into a dark, narrow channel, the cold water swirling around your ankles. The air is thick, heavy, and oppressive, laden with the faint, sour scent of decomposing matter mixed with mud and stone. The flickering candlelight casts long, wavering shadows, making the ink on fragile papyrus shimmer. The sound of rushing water is a constant companion, occasionally punctuated by the distant squeak of rats or the flutter of unseen wings. Your hands, calloused and steady, check the wooden sluice gates. Gathered in shadowed corners or beneath the arches of public buildings, the public slaves share what little they have. A thick, coarse bread, sometimes stale and watered-down wine, or diluted porridge. The flavors are plain, the texture rough against their tired mouths. Names were stripped away or forgotten, replaced by function and status. The walls glisten with moisture, and every breath is an effort, cautious and measured. Glances, brief gestures of kindness, shared warmth on cold nights. These were small acts of humanity in a life measured by labor. Even this small comfort is tempered by the knowledge of the tasks that await when the short break ends. Your senses heighten to catch any movement, any warning. In this environment, every moment carries risk from slipping on slick stone to the silent threat of disease lurking in the murky waters. The hard floor is the closest thing to comfort, and the mind still restless. They wander to thoughts of freedom or family things long left behind. More common are sharp commands, a raised hand, or the sudden crack of a whip breaking the stillness. The distant sound of water flowing, a lullaby of the city itself. Discipline here is strict, though not indiscriminate. The efficiency of the empire depends on obedience as much as labor. His fingers ache from the constant grip of the reed pen, the slow, deliberate strokes forming letters in a practiced script. Outside, the city rests, but for him. The night is a working vigil hours, marked only by the soft scratching of pen on papyrus and the distant drip of water. Mistakes mean starting again, as no one would tolerate errors in Rome's official paperwork. Overseers, often freedmen with a sharp eye, patrol silently. They observe not only work, but demeanor alert, for signs of fatigue, error, or disobedience. They had no families of their own, no recognized lineage or citizen rights. You remove debris, fallen leaves, and sometimes even small creatures swept into the flow. The task demands patience and precision. A misstep here could cut off water to entire districts. Outside, the city's rising sounds filter through a faint murmur of voices, the clip-clop of horses, the soft cries of vendors. Shift your presence to another slave one who labors indoors, in a cramped, poorly lit office. The walls are thick with dust and parchment scraps. This slave copies official edicts and census records by hand. The air smells faintly of wax and old vellum, a scent mingling with the underlying musk of stone and sweat. Not all public slaves work indoors or with delicate tools. Some face the grimiest parts of the city, the Cloaca Maxima and its network of sewers. You carry a simple iron hook, scraping and lifting the clogs and debris that choke the flow. Your clothes stick to your skin, soaked and heavy. Throughout the day, moments for rest are brief and humble. There is little conversation, mostly quiet exchanges of names murmured in low tones. Even in these modest moments, a sense of surveillance lingers. A nod of approval from an overseer is rare and often fleeting. Public slaves lived at the margins of Roman society. They existed within the city, but apart from its social life. Their identity was tied to their role, the aqueduct slave, the torchbearer, or simply that one. And yet, despite this isolation, there was a quiet resilience. Bonds formed silently in shared hardship. As the sun sinks beneath Rome's tiled roofs, as the city's noises soften the chatter of the forum fades, the distant hum of evening prayers rises. For the public slave, the day's work does not always end with sunset. Some duties required night watches, others preparation for the following day. When rest finally comes, it is sparse and uneasy. Imagine the cool night air brushing against your tired skin as you close your eyes. In this endless cycle of toil and quiet endurance, the public slaves of Rome kept the great empire's heart beating, though few would ever know their names. Before emperors gave speeches in marble forums, before feasts were held beneath ceilings painted like the heavens, before even the first citizen walked proudly across the polished stone of a newly paved street, someone else arrived first, the slave, not just any slave, but a service public slave of Rome. He would rise before the sun, if he slept at all. You can almost feel it now. The chill of early dawn in a stone chamber deep beneath a public building. There is no window. The air is damp. The walls sweat with moisture. His bed is simple, maybe straw, maybe nothing. Around him, the breath of other bodies, men stirring, quiet murmurs. As the light of the city stirs above, the city beneath must begin to move. And in Rome, the city depends on those unseen hands to function. The fountains must flow. The sewers must clear. The fires must be prevented. The scrolls must be copied. And none of it happens without him. The scrape of calloused feet on stone. A public slave does not belong to a master, but to the state. Your hands still damp. You press them to dry before taking stylus to wax tablet. The city's ledgers must be updated. Decrees copied. Names recorded. Grain stocks noted. Legal transcripts preserved. There is no household, no patron. He is owned by Rome itself, its stone and law and order. Others he sweeps and oils the marble floors of the baths, scrubbing until his joints crack, ensuring that the senator's foot never touches dust. To scrub out the sweat of Rome's privilege, you sweep ash from the furnace rooms, fetch buckets of water for the frigidarium, clean vomit from the drains. You see the backs of men who don't see you. You hear conversations you must forget. Politics, affairs, treason. All of it flows past you like the water through the baths themselves. His body aches already, 'cause yesterday, too, was long. The candles flicker, and your eyes sting. Your muscles remember the sewers. But now you must focus, spelling out names of magistrates you'll never meet. There is no time for personal thought, no space for rest. The water is cold, then warm, then cold again, depending on what it carries. A broken arch to repair, or perhaps nothing. Just another day of silence and obedience. You're not alone. Other slaves work in pairs, their tools scraping, their voices low, their breaths shallow. No one speaks unless necessary. The scroll, the aching rhythm of that life slow and soften. Let the next door open gently, into another life, another layer of Rome. In the silence, no warm meal. You return to your lodging stone walls, straw mats, iron rings on the doors. You eat what you are given. Coarse bread, bean mash, perhaps a splash of sour wine if you're lucky. His tasks vary. Some days, he draws water from wells at the Castellamacqui, where the city's aqueducts distribute their bounty. But this morning, the orders are clear. The Cloaca Maximarum's great sewer must be cleared of debris. Imagine standing at its mouth. A yawning stone tunnel carved through the underbelly of the city. The water moves slowly, dark and thick, carrying with it the runoff of 10,000 homes. You smell it long before you approach, a crigged, acrid, clinging scent of waste, rot, and damp stone. There is no torch. It's just a shallow lantern in a horn case, held between your teeth or tied around your neck. Wading in, the walls close around you. Your feet slip on algae, rats scurry unseen. The labor is not just hard. It is humiliating, but there is no choice. By midday, your shift might change. If you reliterate and some rue repulled from the dark to work in the record halls. In the scriptorium, rows of men sit hunched on stools. The scratching of stylus is the only sound. A mistake means lashes. Ink is scarce. Wax is reused. Later still, you're sent to the baths, not to bathe, but to clean. You are everywhere and invisible. When night falls, there is no celebration. Some sleep comes, not rest, but escape. Tomorrow may bring something worse, a public punishment to carry out. A messenger route through hostile streets, or no chains on your wrists, but you are owned just the same. You are not a gladiator, you are not a criminal, you are not a nobleman's plaything. You are the machine that runs the city. You are its sewer cleaner, its scribe, its janitor. Its voice when it needs to be heard. Its hands when it needs something moved. And without you, Rome collapses. But no statue bears your name. No song remembers your labor. Only the stone. Now let the noise of the day fade. And as you step quietly out of the slave's shadow, as the city of Rome bustled above, the story of its ruler unfolded like a slow and haunting drama. Nero, Claudius, Caesar, Augustus, Germanicus, an emperor whose name would echo through the ages. Shrouded in tales of extravagance, cruelty, and mystery, the air is thick with the scent of burning incense and fresh paint, mingled with the faintest whisper of anxiety. Nero walks these corridors, his mind weighed down by pressures unseen, yet deeply felt. His advisors speak in measured tones, but behind their eyes lurks distrust. The empire teeters on a fragile edge. His advisors vanished under mysterious circumstances. Rebellions ignited in distant provinces. The Senate, once an advisory body, grew bold in opposition, and Nero's paranoia deepened. Trust became scarce, alliances fragile. In a secluded villa, faced with the collapse of all he had built, he chose to end his own life. Was his downfall a tragedy of personal failing, or the inevitable result of political machinations? The story of Nero invites reflection on power's fragility, the weight of leadership, and the shadows that linger behind the grandeur of empire. History offers no simple answer, only a slow unraveling of events woven with ambition, fear, and fate. His death marked the close of the Julio-Claudian dynasty and ushered in a year of civil war. Imagine him in the grand auditorium of the Domus Aurea, his golden palace gleaming beneath vaulted ceilings. The great fire spread swiftly through wooden structures and narrow alleys, consuming 10 of the city's 14 districts. More measured accounts suggest Nero actively coordinated relief, opening his gardens to shelter the displaced, organizing food supplies, and initiating rebuilding efforts. Smoke curled upward, blotting out the stars. The sound of crackling timber and collapsing roofs filled the night. Rumors that Nero himself had started the fire to clear space for his extravagant palace swirled through taverns and forums. The Senate, once deferential, grew bold in its criticism. Nero's paranoia deepened. Imagine the growing isolation of a man who no longer trusted even those closest to him. Advisors disappeared under suspicious circumstances, replaced by flatterers and spies. "What an artist dies in me," he is said to have murmured. Rome teetered on the brink of civil war, its foundations shaken by the fall of a man both reviled and mourned. Yet some historians suggest a man overwhelmed by the demands of empire, caught between his desires and the harsh realities of rule. Madness or machination, tragedy or tyranny, the lines blur. Public opinion grew restless, and the emperor's popularity waned. Yet the unrest did not cease. The forums bustle once more, but beneath the surface lies the quiet tension of change. Citizens fled their homes, clutching what few possessions they could carry. The air is perfumed with costly incense. The flicker of oil lamps softens the edges of the marble. Here Nero would sing, compose poetry, and perform music, delighting in the applause of a carefully selected audience. This passion for the art set him apart, and at odds with the Roman elite, who valued discipline, military prowess, and political gravitas. The young emperor fled Rome under cover of darkness, accompanied by a few loyal attendants. In a secluded villa in the countryside, faced with the collapse of his world, Nero chose death by his own hand. He married multiple times, yet these unions were marked by tension and sometimes violence. The deaths of his mother, Agrippina, and wife Octavia remain subjects of debate. Official accounts suggest orchestrated plots, yet the true nature of these events is shrouded in silence. Tonight, we will explore the complex unraveling of Nero's reign, seeking not the sensational headlines, but the quieter, deeper currents that shaped his tragic end. Here, the story of one man's rise and fall unfolds, not as a thunderous spectacle. Picture him stepping into the role, surrounded by marble statues, frescoed walls, and the steady gaze of Rome's senators. His early days held promise. Advisors like Seneca the Younger sought to guide the young emperor toward wisdom and restraint. The empire was vast and complex, demanding constant attention to distant provinces, taxation, and diplomacy. But as a slow, somber unraveling marked by whispers, shadows, and the heavy weight of expectation, a young emperor tutored by wise senators, he inherited the throne at just 17. But as years passed, the line between ruler and performer blurred. Flames licked the night sky for days, reducing neighborhoods to ash. The populace whispered that Nero had sung as the city burned, an image that would haunt his legacy. But historical accounts are more nuanced. Some suggest Nero actively organized relief efforts, opening his palaces to shelter the displaced. Yet suspicion and rumor swirled relentlessly. Nero's love for the arts, his singing, his poetry sometimes seemed to eclipse his duties. This caused unrest among the elite, who saw a dangerous frivolity in their leader. Imagine yourself stepping into the marble halls of the Domus Aurea, Nero's vast golden palace. Nero's rule began with promise. One of the pivotal moments came in the year 64 AD, when a great fire consumed much of Rome. The emperor's relationships became increasingly strained. As tension mounted, Nero's enemies conspired quietly. Plots and counterplots wove through Rome's streets and villas. The young emperor's grip weakened until the fateful day when the Senate declared him a public enemy. Nero fled the city under the cover of darkness, accompanied by a handful of loyal servants. Yet questions remain. Was Nero truly mad, or merely a ruler overwhelmed by forces beyond his control? Imagine the city's pulse shifting with this change, Romans waking to a new dawn, uncertain and cautious. As the bustling sounds of Rome fade to a distant hum, let your mind drift back to the imperial palaces and crowded streets of the first century. Nero, Claudius, Caesar Augustus, Germanicus ascended to the throne as a youth of just 17 years. Yet, as seasons passed, Nero's interests shifted. In the year 64 AD, Rome was engulfed in flames. Some ancient sources paint Nero as indifferent, even gleeful, allegedly fiddling while Rome burned. Yet this image is clouded by rumor and political bias. Still, suspicion lingered in the air like a stubborn fog. Beyond the fire, Nero's personal life became entangled in tragedy and scandal. Political enemies multiplied. Governors in the provinces rebelled, sensing weakness. In this climate, conspiracies took root. The Pisonian conspiracy, a plot to overthrow Nero, was uncovered, resulting in executions and widespread fear. Finally, in 68 AD, the Senate declared Nero a public enemy. The walls of the city seemed to close in. His final words, reportedly uttered with a strange calm, spoke not of triumph, but of regret. The death of Nero marked the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, and the beginning of a turbulent year known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Was Nero mad? His erratic behavior, artistic excesses, and alleged cruelty have fueled this view for centuries. Imagine now the city waking slowly to a new dawn, citizens carrying the memory of Nero's reign like a faded scar. And in this slow descent from power, there is a lesson not in spectacle, but in the fragile balance of leadership, trust, and the weight of history's gaze. As the city of Rome hums above, hidden deep beneath its crowded streets, lies a secret world. The dimly lit sanctuaries of the Mithraic cult, mystery religion that thrived in the shadows of empire. Tonight, we descend quietly into these underground chambers, where initiation rites and rituals unfolded in whispered secrecy. Imagine yourself stepping through a narrow, unmarked doorway, descending stone steps worn smooth by countless feet. The air grows cooler and stiller. Flickering oil lamps cast dancing shadows on rough-hewn walls, revealing carved reliefs of a young god slaying a sacred bull. Mithras, the enigmatic figure at the heart of this ancient faith. It flourished largely among soldiers, merchants, and slaves, men bound by secrecy, camaraderie, and shared trials. Its temples, known as Mithraea, were small and hidden. Cramped caves or vaulted crypts beneath warehouses, inns, or private homes, Mithraism was not part of Rome's official state religion. Here, beneath the city's roar, bonds were forged in darkness, and the clinking of simple cups, you become part of this hidden world. The noise and bustle of Rome return, but the memory of the underground sanctuary lingers, a quiet reminder of the mysteries beneath the marble and stone. It's the hush of the Mithraeum, the rough stone beneath your hands. The steady rhythm of voices all invite calm reflection on faith, belonging, and the search for meaning. The cult provided structure, purpose, and a shared identity, a small light flickering in the vast shadows of empire. The air vibrates with low chants and the muted footsteps of initiates moving through rituals known only to the few. Hierarchies within the cult were strict, with members progressing through grades marked by symbolic garments, secret signs, and complex ceremonies. Yet archaeological finds hint at a belief system focused on light and darkness, life and death, and the promise of salvation. Some scholars suggest parallels with later religious traditions. Though Mithraism remained distinct, its rituals wrapped in mystery. Inside, the atmosphere is heavy with the scent of wax, burning herbs, and damp stone. This story was depicted on sculpted reliefs lining the sanctuary walls, each detail rich with symbolism. Around these images, initiates gathered, sharing meals and oaths in close fellowship. The central myth told of Mithras slaying the primordial bull, an act believed to bring life, fertility, and renewal to the cosmos. Little is known of the precise beliefs and practices of the cult, as its members guarded its secrets closely. The secrecy of Mithraism offered an escape for men living in the vast, often impersonal Roman Empire. As you imagine sitting quietly in the chamber, listening to the soft murmur of prayers, the ritual breaking of bread, slowly, you rise and ascend the worn steps back to the surface. As the lively noises of Rome's forums and markets pulse above, imagine stepping quietly into a very different world. One hidden far below the city's sunlit avenues. Here, in narrow, stone-lined chambers, flickering lamps illuminate the secret rites of the Mithraic cult, a mystery religion that thrived in silence and shadows. The heavy door creaks open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into the cool earth. With each step, the sounds of the city dim, replaced by the gentle echo of your footsteps and the soft drip of distant water. But a solemn act of cosmic renewal, a sacrifice bringing life to the world. Around this central relief, other carvings depict celestial symbols, the sun, and moon, stars, and constellations, weaving the cult's vision of a universe balanced between light and darkness. Still, it is clear that Mithraism offered its followers a promise, a chance for spiritual rebirth, protection through life's dangers, and perhaps even salvation beyond death. It was a sanctuary for those living at the empire's margins, where official religion and politics intertwined, and where personal faith could flourish quietly. The cool stone beneath your fingertips, the faint flicker of lamplight, and the soft murmur of ancient prayers become part of your memory. A quiet moment of mystery nestled deep within the history of Rome. Picture yourself standing at a small, unassuming entrance tucked away in a busy district, perhaps beneath a warehouse or a modest inn. The darkness that enveloped the Mithraeum was not oppressive but protective, shielding the sacred from the chaos above. At the bottom, you enter a Mithraeum, a vaulted sanctuary carved from stone, often no larger than a modest room. The air is cool, thick with the faint aroma of beeswax from dozens of oil lamps, mixed with the herbal scent of burning incense. And devotion, a glimpse into a hidden faith that once thrived beneath the footsteps of emperors and commoners alike. The walls are adorned with intricate bas-reliefs depicting the central scene, Mithras, the youthful deity, slaying the sacred bull in a pose both powerful and serene. This striking image is the heart of Mithraic belief. The bull's death is not violent chaos. Membership in this cult was exclusive, restricted to men, many of whom were soldiers, merchants, or slaves seeking meaning and belonging in the sprawling Roman Empire. Initiation was a gradual journey through 7 grades, each marked by secret ceremonies, special garments, and coded hand gestures. These rituals were conducted in whispered tones, emphasizing trust and unity among the brothers. As you imagine sitting on a stone bench along the sanctuary's side, you sense the solemnity of these gatherings. Initiates break simple bread together, share watered wine from clay cups, and recite prayers in a language known only to them. The low hum of chants and the soft shuffle of feet create a rhythm of calm devotion. The cult's secrecy means much about its theology remains elusive. In these chambers beneath the city, friendship and faith merged into a bond stronger than the empire itself. As you prepare to leave, rising slowly and retracing your steps back to the bustling surface world, the lingering sense of calm remains with you. The city above continues its vibrant, noisy rhythm, but you carry with you a secret echo of silence. Above the sewers and sanctuaries, past the clamor of street markets and the flickering torches of the Mithria, lies another world entirely one of silk-draped chambers, of crystal goblets and polished marble floors. Here, in the quiet twilight of empire, the Roman elite dine not simply for pleasure, but for power. The doorway is flanked by columns, and the air is perfumed with crushed myrtle and saffron. Slaves greet you silently, guiding you through shadowed hallways into a triclinium of formal dining room arranged with 3 reclining couches, draped with fine linens. The guests recline on their left sides, propped against cushions, as attendants move quietly between them. Conversation flows slowly, each phrase carefully chosen, each laugh gently calculated. Imagine yourself entering a grand domus, the home of a wealthy Roman senator. Soft lamplight glows from bronze fixtures suspended above the room, casting gentle shadows over mosaic floors. The patterns underfoot depict mythic scenes, gods feasting, sea creatures dancing, the eternal hunt. Poison was not an uncommon visitor at Roman feasts. A dropped ring in a cup, a shift in color, a servant who lingered too long. A cooling digestive of herbs is served in carved glass vessels. The music softens. The act, if done, would be untraceable, and the motive rarely questioned. Power was gained not only in the Senate but in the silence of supper. Then trays of olives, figs soaked in wine, and soft cheeses wrapped in fresh vine leaves. These dinners are layered with intention. Alliances are formed in whispers, rivalries sharpened over shared sauce. The city breathes beyond the villa walls. Laughter fades. Words slow. These are gentle offerings, meant to awaken the appetite. The air carries the scent of roasted meats, fresh herbs, and honeyed wine. Tonight's feast is not merely a meal. It is an orchestrated performance of wealth, taste, and subtle competition. The first course arrives. Lightly dressed oysters served on polished silver. Between courses, a hired poet recites verses in measured tones. A lyre is strummed in the background, soft, slow, lilting. Now the centerpiece. A steaming platter of peacock tongues, arranged delicately alongside flamingo breast and spiced dormice. These are not simply exotic delicacies, but declarations of status. Rare ingredients, brought from far provinces, are consumed not for hunger, but for what they symbolize: the richness of empire, or the reach of power. As wine is poured, again diluted in the traditional style, you notice the quiet glances exchanged between guests. A slight nod here, a careful compliment there. Beneath the pleasantries, danger simmers. The final course is sweet. Candied dates, honey-glazed pine nuts, and little pastries shaped like animals. As the evening wanes, the guests are led to the atrium where the stars are just beginning to emerge in the Roman sky. And you, now a quiet observer in this elite circle, begin to notice the contrast, the marble ease of wealth above, and the trembling labor that supports it below. In this final segment, the empire reveals itself in its full duality: gilded and grim, perfumed and polluted, structured and secretive. The senators may feast on delicacies from distant lands, but it is the unseen hands of slaves, of cooks, messengers, and scribes that serve their power. You step back from the glowing chamber, the candles flicker behind you. The stone grows cool beneath your feet once more. Now, as the marble palaces and echoing forums of Rome grow quiet with the deep hours of night, we descend again not into the grandeur of empire, but into its hidden sanctuaries. Beneath the foundations of insulate and bathhouses, under villas and grain stores, lies a secret Rome, a quieter one, a darker one, a Rome of whispers and flickering lamps, where a foreign god is worshipped in silence and secrecy. The god's name is Mithras. The torch in your hand flickers against the damp walls as the temperature drops. There are no loud festivals, no shouting of crowds, no open altars in city squares. Mithraism is a mystery religion. Its rites are hidden, its membership exclusive, its worship wrapped in rich symbolic layers. You descend not into grandeur, but into intimacy. A vaulted cave, a low crypt, or a chamber carved from bedrock. The air is cool and thick, carrying a scent of old earth, of beeswax, and faint spice. Their faith, quiet and solemn, is etched in stone, in small tokens and carved symbols. The raven, the bridegroom, the soldier, the lion, all the way to the Father, the most secret of the brethren. Each initiate wore a special costume. Each ceremony held meanings we can only guess at now. They may have involved fasting, trials of endurance, symbolic deaths, and sacred meals. In the blood of the bull, new life springs. But unlike the feasts of senators, this meal was not about status or politics. It was about brotherhood, unity, trust, from its spine grain, from its tail, grapes, from its death, the world is reborn. The meal shared in the Mithraeum echoed that moment a reenactment of divine communion. And his temples lie beneath the world. The air grows warmer as you return to the city above. But something of that stillness clings to you, a gentleness, sense of things unknown but deeply felt. But here, in the Roman Empire, his cult has grown into something distinct. In the way it was practiced in secret, with care and restraint, for every empire declared in marble, there was a quiet prayer whispered underground. In the way it offered belonging to men far from home, soldiers stationed in cold outposts, ex-merchants traveling alone, freedmen seeking purpose. Some scholars believe the entire cult reflected a celestial journey and ascent of the soul through the seven spheres, each ruled by a planet toward eternal light. Roman soldiers, stationed at the edges of the known world, carried this god with them, into Germania, Britannia, Numidia, and the cold northern provinces. The sound of sandals brushing stone, the glow of firelight reflecting off ancient eyes. The air carries a warmth not from sun, but from shared belief. Not from empire, but from mystery. They built temples underground, seeking a connection to the divine far from the shrines of Jupiter and Mars. Imagine a narrow stairwell, barely wide enough for one person, its stone steps worn smooth by years of careful feet. The brethren rise slowly and disappear into the night above. The temple sleeps again, its walls silent, its secrets preserved. This is a Mithroma sanctuary of the god Mithras. It is not open to the public. The chamber is long and narrow, shaped like a cave, or like the belly of the world itself. On either side are stone benches, low and worn, where worshippers once reclined shoulder to shoulder. At the far end, in the dim glow of a hanging lamp, is a relief always the same scene. Mithras young, in strong and flowing garments, plunges a dagger into the neck of a great white bull. This is not a scene of cruelty, but of sacrifice. The story is older than Rome. Mithras' origins stretch far East Persian, perhaps, or even older still. You take your place along the bench, beside shadows of men long vanished. Their voices are gone, but their footsteps remain. There were 7 levels to the cult's initiation, each step a journey deeper into mystery. In this space, the sacred meal was central. Bread and wine shared in low light. Mithras himself was believed to have dined with the sun god, Sol Invictus, in a final meal before ascending into the heavens. As you look around, symbols of the stars surround you. Carvings of the zodiac, depictions of the cosmos, and yet There is something deeply human in this faith. In its closeness, here underground, they found meaning. And now you sit in stillness, imagining the low murmur of voices in a forgotten tongue. Eventually, the rites end. The lamps are extinguished. You too rise. You ascend the same stairway, your hand trailing along the wall. You step out once more into the night air. Rome bustles faintly in the distance, but beneath your feet, far below, a god still waits in darkness. And that is the paradox of Rome. For every golden arch above, there was a flickering lamp below. And sometimes it is in the hidden things, the quiet things, that meaning is found. As evening settles over Rome, soft shadows stretch across tiled rooftops and gardened courtyards. The streets below fall into murmurs, merchants shuttering their stalls, slaves returning from the bathhouses, distant lyres being tuned in courtyards. You are a guest, perhaps a distant cousin of an equestrian, or a favored friend of a provincial governor. This formal dining space is carefully arranged, designed to impress. Each guest reclines, their left elbow propped against embroidered cushions, their right hand free to gesture or receive morsels. Servants glide noiselessly between the diners. Their tunics are simple but spotless, and their movements are practiced and almost invisible. The ceiling above is coffered and painted with mythological scenes. Perhaps a whole roast boar. It is a display. Another enters with a small caged bird, its feathers dyed gold merely to amuse. Laughter drifts gently across the table, soft and restrained. A coded language. The mood softens. Sweet pastries filled with honey and sesame are served alongside fruit poached in wine and cinnamon. A cooling beverage of barley water infused with mint soothes the stomach. The doors close behind you, and the villa becomes quiet again, sealed from the world. While the common man in Rome might eat barley, porridge, or chickpeas, the senator dines on empire itself. Somewhere in the rear chambers, the servants clear away the silver, sweep the floors, and douse the last of the candles. There are currents of unease. It is not uncommon for food tasters to precede each bite taken by the most powerful guests. Cups are kept close, and eyes linger too long on the wine jug being poured. And the empire continues, quiet and ancient, under the endless Roman sky. A soft-spoken poet recites verses by candlelight. A young musician plucks at the strings of a cithara, his notes lingering like mist in the air. Others simply watch the lamplight flicker on polished bronze, speaking less now, digesting not just food, but the evening's performances, signals, and silences. Poison, though rare, is not unheard of. The stakes at these tables are not only culinary, they are political. A slip of the tongue, a careless jest, an unexpected guest, which could shift an alliance or end a career. The ingredients chosen, the order of presentation, the novelty of the spices all reflect the host's power, his wealth, his connections to the provinces, and his ability to entertain without excess or vulgarity. Its belly filled with sausages and fruits, sliced open to spill a cascade of figs, or a dish of tiny songbirds, each wrapped in grape leaves and flavored with cumin and honey. The famed peacock tongues are served with saffron and vinegar, presented on silver platters with sprigs of thyme tucked artfully beside them. Cold melon slices sprinkled with ground coriander and sea salt, eggs soaked in garam, fermented fish sauce served with pickled onions, trays of dates stuffed with pine nuts and crushed pepper. The flavors are strange, rich, unfamiliar. The wine, carefully diluted with snow-cooled water, is sipped slowly from thin glass cups. Beneath your sandals, the mosaic floor glimmers with tesserae arranged in scenes of Dionysian revelry. The atrium echoes with the soft splash of a central fountain. Petals float on the surface of the water. The scent of laurel and rose oil drifts from clay diffusers, mingling with the sweetness of ripe fruits stacked in alabaster bowls. They rise slowly, stretching limbs grown heavy with wine and reflection. Their sandals click softly against the tile. Parting words are exchanged at the entrance, often vague, sometimes meaningful. Yet behind the thick marble walls of the city's finest villas, a different kind of rhythm begins. The hushed elegance of a senator's dinner party. Imagine yourself stepping through a colonnaded entrance, the torchlight catching in pools on polished stone. You are led through a tablinum, past shelves lined with scrolls and bronze busts, and into the triclinium. The couches are draped in dyed linens, some deep crimson, others ocean blue. Topics float gently from recent military appointments in the East to poetry recited in the Forum, to rumors about a praetor's wife glimpsed riding alone in the countryside. Every word is measured, every silence meaningful. The meal begins with the gestatio, a selection of delicacies meant to open the palate. Conversation meanders with the meal. No voices are raised. The main course arrives in elaborate display. To eat is not simply to nourish. Slaves offer towels soaked in rosewater to cleanse fingers between courses. Yet beneath the luxury, as the final course approaches, entertainment may follow. The guests do not leave in haste. As you imagine stepping once more into the cool night, you glance back. This world of excess of spices from India, glass from Syria, birds from Numidia floats, atop a vast web of labor, trade, and hierarchy. But even in this, there is a rhythm, a repetition. The feast ends, the wine fades. The streets of Rome have quieted now. The shouts of vendors have faded. The clang of blacksmiths has grown still. Even the public slaves have returned to their crowded quarters. But beyond the flickering oil lamps of ordinary homes, past the ivy-covered walls and guarded gates, another rhythm is just beginning to rise. A Roman senator does not simply eat, he performs, calculates, he watches. You are ushered through perfumed courtyards, past marble statues of serene gods, into the heart of the house. Tonight, you step into the private world of the Roman elite. The mosaic beneath your feet glitters in the firelight, a feast of sea creatures, vines and birds in flight, each tile a careful placement of color and texture. They sip slowly from glass vessels, the wine diluted with cool water drawn from hidden cisterns. Attendants move between them, heads bowed, feet soft on marble. Each knows his master's needs without a word. It is not a loud world, not in the way of festivals or circuses. This is a place of murmurs and glances, long silences and subtle meanings. Imagine approaching the villa's outer gate, massive and dark, watched by torch-bearing guards. A slave announces your name. A young boy plays a quiet tune on a curved flute. The music never overwhelms. It trickles through the background like water in a fountain, always present, never urgent.
Ow.
The triclinium awaits. Upon it, roasted pheasants, spiced dormice, and the famed delicacy of peacock tongues, braised in wine, and laid atop a bed of fragrant bay leaves. There is no hunger here. These dishes are not meant to satisfy, but to impress, to announce one's wealth in whispers, not boasts. This is no ordinary dining room. It is a stage shaped in a perfect U, with 3 reclining couches facing inward toward a central display. A raised eyebrow can carry more weight than a decree. A pause after a name might hint at scandal. A low hum of voices fills the room. Guests recline on one elbow, swathed in dyed linens. Their sandals lie on the floor beside them. A cup that tastes faintly of figs. Servant who hesitates too long. A friend who begins to cough. Senators do not recline in peace. Their beds, later tonight, will be watched. Their message is read, their names spoken in courtyards they do not enter. His wealth is evident in every corner of the room. Imported marble, Syrian glass, spices from India. But the true display is in control. Control over the servants, the choices, the silence, the invisible meanings behind every dish. Control over the narrative. Control over the flow of wine, laughter, and silence. olives crushed with fennel, almost symbolic. They awaken the palate. They awaken the palate, but also the eye. This is not only a meal. This is a map of power. The sweets are delicate, honey cakes in the shape of fish, pine nuts glazed with syrup, dried figs soaked in red wine, platters of dates and rose petal jam. Final wine is served with herbs for digestion. Nothing is rushed. The seating arrangement says everything. The guest of honor lies closest to the host. Rivals are placed apart. Allies lie within easy whispering distance. A senator leans in to whisper of rumors from the eastern provinces. A general chuckles softly about troop movements that haven't been made public. A poet asks to recite just one more verse. The candles burn low. Even the dishes are coded messages. Regional specialties hinting at trade ties. Rare spices suggesting political reach. Elaborate preparation implying control over many hands. The gustaccio, or starter, is light. Slices of melon with mint and vinegar. Pickled mussels. Between courses, entertainment softens the space. A poet murmurs an ode to Hercules. Now the servants bring the prima mensa, the main course. A silver platter gleams beneath candlelight. Conversation drifts, like slow smoke, over matters of law, of lineage, of recent Senate votes. And always beneath it all, there is the hum of calculation. Not every smile reaches the eyes. Not every cup of wine is welcome. Roman history is stained with quiet poisonings. The host watches all. From the comfort of his couch, he measures each gesture. After the final course accompaniments is served, the room softens. Some guests speak more freely now. Outside, the moon glides silently over Rome's rooftops. Inside, the triclinium grows still. And here, at the edge of luxury, is a kind of quiet that is not restful. Even at the peak of Rome's hierarchy, no one feasts without danger. As you slowly rise from the couch, thank your host, and pass back through the still villa, you can feel the weight of the evening, not in your stomach, but in the air. Rome was a city of laws and legions, but also of dinner tables carefully set, heavily guarded, deeply symbolic. And behind each glass of wine was a question, behind each bite, a calculation. Now, as you step back into the night and walk the lamplit path home, you realize the empire never truly sleeps. It whispers, it watches, and tonight it dined. And now, the candles have burned low. The last echoes of footsteps weather, from the dark corridors of Rome's sewers or the hushed marble floors of a senator's villa have faded into stillness. Tonight, you have walked the quiet paths of empire. Beneath the clamor and conquest, beyond the marble statues and military triumphs, you've seen the daily breath of Rome eats toil, its rituals, its power, and its silence. You stood in the shadows with the public slaves where each day began before the sun, marked by labor and endurance. You watched the slow unraveling of Nero's reign, how a life of privilege can teeter into exile and ruin. You descended into the sacred hush of Mithras temples, lit by soft flame and bound by ancient vows. And you reclined among the empire's elite, where every bite of a peacock tongue whispered politics, performance, and danger. The Roman Empire was a machine of staggering complexity, a mosaic of people, places, and lives woven together. Not just by legions and laws, but by water haulers and candlelight scribes, secret rites and scented feasts. And though centuries have passed, their world still lingers. It's in buried ruins, in fading texts, in the quiet space between what is remembered and what is forgotten. Let that quiet settle around you now. You lie in stillness. Let your breath slow, like the wind brushing the Tiber at dusk. And let the weight of history soften, becoming light like dust in the lamplit air of a Mithraeum. There is nothing more to carry tonight, no emperors to watch, no scrolls to copy, no wine to pour, only rest. And the quiet, ancient hum of a world once vast, now gently asleep beneath the stars, and now As the final embers of this journey glow dim, you may find yourself still drifting among the colonnades and cobbled streets of ancient Rome. In the hush that follows, the lives we visited tonight linger like after-images. The tired eyes of a slave lighting a torch before dawn, the quiet dread behind a ruler's crown, the low chant in a candlelit temple, and the cool weight of a goblet raised among calculated smiles. Each was a part of Rome, not the Rome of textbooks and conquests, but the lived-in Rome, the one, of sweat, smoke, and silence. It was a world of cycles, of days that began before sunrise and ended long after dark, of seasons marked by flooding rivers and slow-growing grain, of lives shaped by forces far larger than themselves, by patrons and gods, by politics and weather, by tradition and time. And though their names are mostly forgotten, their presence was real. You've walked beside them tonight, not as a tourist in history, but as a quiet observer, slipping between the cracks where real stories live. In every empire beneath the marble and triumph, there is breath, there is stillness. There is the echo of hands tired, tender, trembling, enduring. Perhaps if you close your eyes now, you'll still hear the distant splash of water in the aqueduct, the slow tread of sandals on polished stone, the faint murmur of a prayer spoken in a tongue long lost. Let it all wash gently over you. There is no need to remember names or dates, no test, no timeline, just the rhythms of life as it was difficult, fragrant, strange, and deeply human. Let the weight of that past lull you, not burden you. Let it drift with you like incense smoke curling upward, fading softly into the dark. Because in the end, even mighty Rome, with all its emperors, legions, scribes, and slaves, eventually fell quiet too. And now so can you. Breathe deeply, let the stories settle, let the night take over. You are no longer in the city, no longer at the feast, no longer beneath the temple vault. You are here, in stillness, peace, and you may sleep.